everybody.
Hi, friends. Well, from beautiful Salt Lake City, Utah.
It's Thank God I'm Atheist,
where we, a couple of ding-dong atheists, try to make sense of religion, politics, and current events here in these fascist United States.
Well, you're really selling it, Dan. This is Frank Feldman.
And I'm Dan Beecher.
And coming up on the show today, Dan, we're going to be talking about this horrible thing that's just been spreading through society.
Oh my gosh, it's like a poison.
Oh my God, empathy, everyone.
It is literally like if the far right manosphere is to be believed, and I believe they are. It's the worst thing that could possibly happen. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to explore it. We're going to figure it out.
Turns men into pansies and pansies into
even dumber flowers.
And ironically, pansies are pretty tough. Tough little flowers. Did you know that, Dan?
They're I know that they can be very cold tolerant.
Yeah. I guess that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
All right, Dan. Well, we have some other things to talk about before we get to that.
Okay.
So, some news. Things happened this week that are worth talking about.
A new or two.
Including satanic panic.
Oh, no.
Over there in Kansas City, Kansas. Which is kind of confusing because it's the Catholic Archbishop of Kansas City, Kansas, who's freaking out about something that's happening over in actual Kansas. Oh, okay. So it's Kansas City. Okay, I remember why I was confused. Now I'm not. I just confused everybody else.
Listen, Kansas City needed to get their act together. I blame them entirely. Why on earth are there two Kansas cities and one of them isn't even in Kansas and they're still the same city? It's not acceptable. Unacceptable.
Bizarre.
Redraw the lines, everybody. Come on.
Anyway, over there in Kansas, there has been a group of Satanists from something called the Satanic Grotto. Who've been planning on doing a black mass on Capitol grounds.
As they are wont to do, these Satanists.
And so it's caused quite the stir. People are in fucking freak out mode over there in Kansas.
Which one's got to assume is the point?
I mean, it does kind of seem to be the point.
Thank you for playing directly into our hands, say the Satanists.
What I do want to point out is that this is not the Satanic Temple people.
Right.
These are potentially actual Satanists. Right?
Well,
or are these just some pranksters?
Listen, Satanic Temple people are Satanists. They just do it not the way Christians expect Satanists to Satan.
They're not Satanists. They don't believe in an actual literal figure of Satan.
Correct. That's true. But I think that that's actually the case for lots of Satanist sects.
Well, okay. Whatever.
Anyway, we don't know anything about these guys.
These are not affiliated with that larger group that we do know more about. Anyway, the state rulemakers, legislative leaders, Republican and Democratic, unanimously changed their rules for assembly in communal areas inside the Topeka, which is the state capital, state house, and on the grounds of the state house. And so, I guess moving forward, these tightened restrictions will apply not just to satanic worshipers, but to anyone else planning an event or anything on the Capitol grounds.
Sure.
They have done things like. So what happened is, in response to this announcement, this was going to be happening. Not only were these rules getting changed and whatnot, but also this Catholic Archbishop, right, Joseph Naumann, decided that he was going to accuse the Satanic Grotto of having stolen some consecrated hosts, the Eucharist from him.
Crackers.
Yeah, the crackers.
Stolen some crackers.
He's alleging that that the Eucharist could only have been obtained through illicit means. Theft, fraud, deception, wrongful taking, or other form of misappropriation. This is his accusation.
Okay.
Now, one of the organizers from Satanic Grotto has said that the host that they will be using came from Pope Amazon. And so, he's saying that he ordered the wafers online.
Yeah, you can just buy those.
He plans on performing any sort of consecration of them himself.
Or desecration.
Yeah, but apparently the whole point of the host being desecrated is that the only way you could desecrate it is if it was consecrated first.
Okay, I get it.
Right. And the priest is in on that. Like, he understands that. He knows that that's a key part of this ritual. And that's why he's saying if they have actual host that's been consecrated, that means that they would have had to have stolen it. Right. And so with no evidence whatsoever, he is accusing these guys. And of course, the local authorities are taking the Archbishop's allegations seriously as, I think they all know, a bad faith way to thwart this Black Mass thing. It's really wild. The governor, a Democrat, Laura Kelly, has issued a directive that the Black Mass must be held outside of the Capitol building, meaning that there will be no rotunda ritual.
I mean, that's probably wise. Satanists smell. You don't want that stinking up the place.
She says that there are more constructive ways to protest and express disagreements without insulting or denigrating sacred religious symbols. However, as governor, I also have a duty to protect protesters' constitutional rights to freedom of speech and expression.
Yeah, you do.
Regardless of how offensive or distasteful I might find the content to be. I love that they feel like they have to say these things, right?
Yeah.
That they can't just be like, hey, this is our responsibility as people in government.
That one did have a whiff, and I may be just projecting here, but I feel like I smelled just a whiff of her being like, "This is so stupid, you guys. This doesn't matter. Why are we okay? Oh, even though I find it so offensive, like it to me, it just sounded a little bit like she doesn't actually care, but she's got to play the game."
Anyway, so there's also this whole thing with like these rule changes and whatnot. They've changed these rules to also say that organizers of an event cannot be involved in any violation of law.
Okay.
And they're saying that one of these organizers sent a threatening letter to a member of the legislature, and that is a violation of law. You can't be threatening. And so they're like, but they're unwilling to release any sort of details as to like what kind of threat or what. So I legitimately think they're just trying to gum up these plans with as many sort of just bad faith efforts
just mamby-pamby.
Just come up with any old excuse to desperately try to keep this Black Mass from happening. And one of the organizers, a guy by the name of, his last name's Stewart, Michael Stewart. He says, you're going to see a book get torn, a cross get broken, a cracker get crunched, and wine get drunk. And that is the scariest bit of what we are planning to do. Which I think is pretty great. But yeah, so this is all happening.
He acts like that stuff isn't actually scary, but it is. Okay, it is. It's very scary. We're all terrified over here.
I mean, it is fun to watch people get all caught up in satanic panic, but it's also like,
it's scary.
It's
not.
It's scary. Their reaction is scary, Right.
Well, and it's funny because
I think there's so much potential for people who are legitimately scared of Satan to really overreact.
Yeah.
And that's not a reason to not like do stuff that's going to freak them out. Satanists, go do your little black deeds. But like,
I don't know. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Finish your sentence.
No,
and
like,
then all I was going to say is just like, I'm not 100% convinced now's a good time for it.
oh,
I don't think that it's actually doing the job that it's meant to do anymore, because the courts are getting stacked. The climate is so bad in this country that I'm genuinely now worried that people who affiliate with these organizations might find themselves in jail for no good reason, and it might be a real problem getting them out.
yeah, I mean, that's the tricky thing, right? Is how much do you let the obvious intimidation that like they're trying to do, right? That they're trying to intimidate everybody to just fall in line, right? Like, I guess you don't want to be the first one hauled off to jail, but like until people are, it might be smart to keep pushing. Right?
Oh, I understand that. I just think we need to be smart about who gets hauled off to jail, because what we need is for there to be public sympathy for the people who do get hauled off to jail, and there won't be for the Satanists.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that these Satanists I don't know what their strategy is here, except to just like provoke the Catholics in particular.
Yeah, it feels like just bear poking to me.
Yeah.
And that used to be great. I used to be very on board with poking the bear. But the bear has gotten a lot scarier.
Well, it's on cocaine now.
Yeah.
And I saw that movie.
You don't poke cocaine bear. That's not the bear to be poking. You're poking the wrong bear. Anyway, who knows?
But I mean, Dan, like I hear what you're saying, but like, I don't know that we're really there yet. We're not to that point yet. Like where like, some Satanists can't go out and have some good fun crunching up some host and watching everybody get all
itchy.
All in a dither.
Yeah.
Because also like while they're in a dither over this, they're not doing other stuff.
Maybe they seem to be really good at multitasking right now. I'm just going to say it. They can dither. They are excellent at dithering. They are professional level ditherers at this point. And
yes, indeed.
All right. Well, I'm going to take us to Arizona. It is a neighbor of ours, and they have been they're bananas quite a lot of the time. But the state legislature got jealous because Texas and Florida are leading the way in lunacy, and they decided that they were going to try and follow suit on something that Texas and Florida have already sort of worked out. But they're going to do them one better. So what they've decided to do, you recall that we've reported on Texas and Florida making laws about, instead of having school counselors, what about school Jesus people? What about chaplains?
Ooh.
And then so they all passed laws allowing schools to choose to have chaplains in their schools, and a lot of school districts then said no thank you, which that's awesome. But also there was the problem that came up, which was, Satanic Temple might start a chaplaincy program, and there are humanist chaplains, and there are
the horrible humanists.
Yeah, it's just terrifying. So that's a loophole that Arizona was determined to close before it opened, and they added amendments to this bill that said that So I'll just read directly from the wording of the bill. It says the volunteer school chaplain The principal at each school may refuse to include any volunteer school chaplain on the list developed pursuant to subsection A of this section of the principal if the principal determines that either, 1, the volunteer school chaplain fails to meet the requirements prescribed by subsection, or 2, allowing the volunteer school chaplain to provide support services or programs to students will be contrary to the pedagogical interest of the school. That's not actually the one I wanted to read, but that is interesting that they're like giving an out to the principal to just say, no, that guy runs afoul of our pedagogical interests. But beyond that, going much further than that, they say that the chaplains must be part of a, quote, religious group, and the religious group, literally it says the person must acknowledges the existence, or the religious group must acknowledge the existence of and worship one or more supernatural entities that possess power over the natural world.
Oh my God. So they're defining what is religion for religious folks? Because at
least for chaplaincy.
Yeah, but like anyway, like it just okay, all right.
I love that it's one or more, by the way.
Yeah.
Can I just say that the or more must have really like freaked him out a little bit?
Oh, that
when
hurt.
They wrote that?
That hurt, but there was a lawyer going, this is already dubious.
Yeah, you're already like way off the reservation here.
You need to keep this like as sound as possible. Like if you're going to exclude, you better be as inclusive as you can
in your
while
exclusion.
trying to exclude that group right there.
Yeah.
Otherwise include everyone.
I would be fascinated if suddenly there was, Arizona was overrun with Hindu chaplains. I think what they're banking on is that the only
ancient Greek chaplains.
The only religious groups that can afford to have a chaplaincy program, because they do require that you either have a degree, a master's degree or more in counseling or in theology.
Oh, jeez.
Or you're part of a several years long chaplaincy program sponsored by one of these religions. So,
okay.
A small Hindu temple in Arizona doesn't have the resources to put together a chaplaincy program.
Yeah, it feels like this is designed. Well, I mean, obviously it's designed to be very exclusive.
Yeah.
But I do think somebody should come along with like some sort of ancient Greek chaplain, right?
Yeah.
Like get in there and start teaching about all the Greek gods and all the wonderful lessons you can learn from Greek mythology.
Which would be probably just as useful as Christian mythology, if not more so. If the person's genuinely educated on the subject and they're good.
Yeah.
The problem is that like none of these people are prepared. None of these people have the training necessary to really help a kid who's dealing with a genuine problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if a kid comes to school and they've been beaten at home or whatever, and they've got trauma, saying Jesus loves you is insufficient. It is not what they need. Even saying Zeus loves you won't help. So
that kid probably would appreciate that more, though.
Zeus, listen, Zeus is on your side. You're gonna be okay, buddy.
As much as any other god is on your side,
yeah.
dude. Yeah. Anyway,
so there you go. They're just trying to make things. There was literally an exchange where one representative brought up I think a Democrat was like, the problem with the Constitution, etc. And they were like, no, that doesn't exist. That's not real. They literally said, this is a response by State Senator Wendy Rogers. And I will read it verbatim and allow you to decide how well this person has reasoned this out. There's nowhere that's written there should be a separation of church and state. For one, that's not in the Constitution. It's not in the Bill of Rights. So that's kind of a myth to base it on. And by the way, if I may add, it is constitutional, or it wouldn't have gone through the rules at the Senate. Meaning the Rules Committee.
Right.
It wouldn't have gone through rules at the Senate.
They've never let anything through.
No.
That wound up being unconstitutional, I'm sure. I don't even need to know that much about the Arizona state Senate.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you they've let things through.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Because they've let this through.
Yeah.
So there you go.
That's all we need to know. Thank you. So anyway, that's that passed, by the way.
Oh God. All right. Wow. Our schools.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well,
if you have children, maybe consider another country.
All right. Well, since you just did a school one, I'm going to do a school one too.
Okay.
This is over in Columbus. The Columbus City School Board.
They're in fabulous Ohio.
Yeah, that's probably the one. Right? Like, what other one would it be? Are there other Columbi out there? Anyway, yeah, that one. They have amended their religious release policy. Religious release is the thing where during the school day for one period, typically like an elective period, a child can, obviously with their parental permission, can leave the school grounds to go out for religious education, blah, blah, blah. So they've amended their religious release policy so that it now prevents religious organizations from distributing candy and other items to students that might be alluring.
Oh my God.
Including snacks, clothing, trinkets, or other items that they bring back
trinkets
for their return to school. So all of these organizations that participate, there's one called LifeWise Academy. And of course, it's Ohio, so it's not, they don't have like, Mormon seminaries or whatnot. But there are other groups out there that do this.
Yeah.
And it's been determined by like the U.S. Supreme Court that this is constitutional. This is something that states and school boards can decide to do.
Hooray!
It's not like it's a mandatory thing.
It happens
but it is,
off of the school campus.
Yeah,
they have to leave the school.
Yeah, and so this education is happening outside of the school grounds. So it's okay. It's okay.
Education.
It's yeah.
I just think what's amazing is that what they've realized is that basically these programs are roughly equivalent to scary strangers. Like they're using the same tactics as like, the guy who you don't want your kid to get in their van.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you want some candy?
Hey buddy, hey kid, you want some free candy?
Yeah.
Do you want to come over and see my cool whatever? Anyway.
Hey kid, you want some candy? You want to learn about Jesus?
Yeah.
Right? Like it's creepy that it's the same tactic. But I was also thinking about like just the mind of a child that like candy?
Yeah.
Yes. I will follow
Jesus
you
can't
off
be...
and do anything, good sir. Right? Like
Jesus must be a good guy if I get candy out of the deal.
And how strong is your message, right?
Yeah.
That you have to lure kids with things that would also lure kids into, abduction.
Hey, Hansel and Gretel, would you like some Jesus?
That's crazy. Anyway, the board also amended the policy to require that any organization seeking a religious release program must complete and provide background checks of their instructors.
Oh, good.
So that,
thank God,
that must not have been
that.
a requirement before. Kind of shocking. I mean, I suppose that if you're a parent and you're authorizing the release of your child to one of these groups during the school day, that you probably are at least familiar with the organization first.
Yeah, but you
no,
I think you're overestimating how much work parents do to vet. Like, if it says Jesus on the side of the van, they're probably fine.
And that was the point that I was going to get to, which is they're doing the same level of due diligence that they do with their churches, which is none.
Which is zero.
And the same level of due diligence that churches do, which is zero. Like, these are not organizations that typically go out and do background checks.
Yeah.
So it's good that the schools are saying, if we have to allow this, like, there's a minimum minimum criteria you guys have to meet.
What this says to me is that this has already become enough of a problem that they've felt the need to amend their policy.
Yeah,
they already were problematic.
Yeah,
and so
it does seem interesting that there's the whole. They're taking the whole predator aspect out of the thing, right?
Yeah.
Which they're going after the free candy, and these people have to pass background checks. But it's both telling and sad and pathetic. And I mean, this whole religious release thing, like, I don't know. I can't even remember. I go back and forth on this one as far as like whether I think it should be. Where it seems like a simple accommodation. It's not happening on school ground. No school funding is being used to provide this program, and it keeps some kids whose parents might otherwise, not want them at the public schools, want them over in some religious education someplace else that's even worse than letting them have an hour a day. I don't know. But then there's the other parts, just like, shut the whole fucking thing down. Like, what are we doing here? Like, this is so stupid. Like people have plenty of time to indoctrinate their kids into whatever religion they want to. Why do they need to take time out of their education, their actual education, their chance to like
what country do you think you live in?
I know.
Nobody wants their kids educated anymore. They want them educated in Jeebus.
Oh, well, there's that. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to take us to, just America. Speaking of that country that we live in, where there has been some interesting research done. The National Survey of Religious Leaders, which was conducted in 2019 and 20, and they've sort of trickled out some of their findings, but they finally released the full study, the full report. And one of the things that came out in this report was the level of what clergy actually believe in, facts about science and stuff.
Oh boy.
So, for instance, you could ask, what do you think about climate change? And also, are humans sort of the driving force in the changing climate? Now, we know, because science confirms it, that climate change is occurring and that humans are a major driving force of our climate, of our current climate change. That's just facts.
How dare you, Dan?
Yeah. Well, how dare I indeed? Because now I'll say this: if we were to look at Black Protestant clergy, then we would find that only 27% reject this idea of human-driven climate change.
Okay.
Only 21% of liberal or mainline Protestant clergy reject it.
Wow, okay.
But if we were to look at a group, let's say, of white evangelical clergy, do you want to take a guess how many what percentage of white evangelical clergy reject
that's terrifying.
the settled science of climate change?
I would say probably 60 to 70%.
78%.
Oh, so Bible colleges don't give good educations. Is that what we're...
What? How dare you?
They're not really...
Liberty U is more of a...
their STEM program. They're not known for their STEM programs.
No. I mean, here's the thing. There are other things where they are far more in line with the science. For example, 87% of evangelical clergy say they would encourage congregants to get help from mental health professionals if they find themselves suffering from depression.
Okay. How high?
That's 87.
Okay. Wow.
I mean, compare that with 99% of Catholics and 97% of mainline Protestants, but still 87 is very high.
That is, higher than one would expect. I suppose.
I would have expected it to be much lower because when, you expect them to say, no, what they need is Jesus.
Right.
But I think that most of those clergy have actually tried to Jesus the depression out of people and realized, shit, this doesn't work.
Right.
So there you go.
Okay.
But you don't have none of them have any like personal experience with climate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like with directly dealing with the climate. And I think what it speaks to more than anything is the fact that in this era, because it's the worst of all possible timelines, in this era, whether or not you believe facts is more dependent on your sort of your political or is correlated to your political views. And then political views are correlated to which Christianity a person might become a part of.
Right. Oh, well.
So, yeah.
Geez. So were there other questions or that's it?
I mean, there were things like, do people endorse palliative care at the end of life instead of like, rather than, fighting till the bitter end, like letting go and giving up. And
that's
like
more sort of that's an interesting question.
Almost 70% of all clergy and, 64% of white evangelicals are fine with it, are good with palliative care.
Okay. Yeah.
So, it's like, I think if it is, if it's about an individual person, science is fine. But if it's something where it feels like it would be betraying the Republican Party to believe the science, then no.
All right. Well,
if Fox News came out against palliative care, who knows what would happen?
Well, all hell would break loose. All right, Dan. Have you heard of a religious group called Singularism?
No.
Oh my God, Dan. This might be right up your alley, though.
Is that
Dan.
the belief that I'm the only person?
No.
And the rest of you are all just people in my head?
To be honest, I don't know why it's called Singularism.
Oh, okay.
But that's the name they sort of have settled on to call themselves. Their main shop is down in Provo, Utah.
Oh,
Dan.
Oh dear. They have a shop
of sorts. It's a spiritual center down in the city. Their main focus is, they have a psychedelic sacrament that they present in a form of tea. We're talking about magic mushrooms here, folks. And this founder, Bridger Lee Jensen is his name. Sure. When he first set up the shop back in 2023, he sent a letter to the Provo City Council and to the mayor explaining what his group was and what they would be doing. and that he was, I guess, I don't know if he asserted his religious freedom rights at that time.
Right.
But he felt that religious freedom, extends to this kind of practice, right?
This kind of sacrament,
yes,
if you will.
And so about a year went by, and then the city raided his little organization. And
he did kind of ask for it.
And he
kind of begged for it.
And they seized the sacrament. About 450 grams of mushrooms and mushroom-like material. That the group.
They also had some truffles.
Yeah, indeed. Have you ever had a psychedelic truffle, Dan?
I haven't tried those.
And
they're too expensive. Who can afford it?
It's important to note that these materials were kept in a lock safe.
Sure.
And so anyway, so the whole thing is like going to court, and I believe he's the one who's suing. He's suing the attorney general, and I think the city. It's Jensen v. Utah County. I guess so he's suing Utah County for their enforcement of these laws, for treating him like any old random drug dealer, drug addict, whatever, right? And so it turns out that the state, when they passed our state level Religious Freedom Restoration Act, back, I guess in 2024. So, but after the raid, well before the raid, they passed this law. And so this law it's one of these freedom, it's like the federal one, but it fills in a lot of the gaps, and it really broadens what religious freedom is, right? And the U.S. District Judge Jill Parrish has granted Jensen's request for a preliminary injunction against the city and county officials, ordering them to return the mushrooms and to refrain from further interference with the group's sincere religious use of psilocybin while the case is pending.
That's crazy. That's interesting.
Yeah, she says, in this litigation, the religious exercise claims of a minority entheogenic religion put the state of Utah's commitment to religious freedom to the test.
Yeah.
If such a commitment is to mean anything, it must protect unpopular or unfamiliar religious groups as well as popular or familiar ones.
Oh, that judge is going to lose her bench.
She said
she's not going to be a judge for very much longer.
She says
she's making sense.
The very founding of the state of Utah reflects the lived experience of that truth by members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. In light of that history, it is ironic that not long after enacting its Religious Freedom Restoration Act to provide special protections for religious exercise, the state of Utah should so vigorously deploy its resources, particularly the coercive power of its criminal justice system, to harass and shut down a new religion it finds offensive, practically without any evidence that the religion's practices have imposed any harms on its own practitioners or anyone else.
That is so. He got exactly the right judge.
Yeah, she is fucking, like, her defense. I mean, she hasn't. There's no decision yet. This is still all pending. But just the way that she's talking about this group, and like calling out Mormons. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I love it.
She definitely does. She says that singularism has several accoutrements of religion, and this is apparently important. It's one of the factors that the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit has said judges should consider in religious freedom cases. And so she goes through and she says that singularism has prophets and scripture, right? And she says that the person taking the tea and going on a trip is the prophet, and the facilitator is a scribe who records the insights this person is having, and that is their scripture. And then she says that other preparations for the tea ceremony could include something more familiar from larger religions, such as fasting and reading and internalizing one's patriarchal blessings.
Oh. Oh.
So she is full on drawing like, hey, Mormons, this is how they're practicing similar concepts that you practice.
Yeah.
Right.
This is a woman who A, grew up Mormon, and B, has done shrooms. I'm just going to say.
Anyway, it goes on and on and on, and it was all fascinating.
Yeah.
The state has all of these, or the county, I guess, has all of these claims that they're making about singularism and the founder, and that he's clearly just trying to make money because he's charging $1,600 per tea ceremony. And she goes, actually, he's only making about $40,000 a year now after having left his mental health provider job. He was a licensed mental health provider. And he's making about a third of what he used to make. Clearly not a money grab. She just goes point by point, apparently.
Wow.
And just is dissecting and their arguments. Now, we love religious freedom stories on this show because their religious freedom is about protecting our rights too. Sure. But there's also this question of how to really feel about,
drug religions.
Drug religions. Yeah. Yeah. Like, do I like the idea of this? Do I like the fact that like she 100% believes them that this is sincerely held religious beliefs?
Or even if she doesn't, it's not like judges aren't allowed to read minds.
Right. Exactly. But she apparently, she feels like she presented them with a test to assess their, whatever questioning she asked, whatever she said to these defendants or whatever she heard in court, whatever it was, she feels like they passed a test that she feels is legitimate for assessing whether something is a sincerely held belief.
Right.
And she feels like they passed. So that's great. But yeah, I don't fully know how I feel about it. Like, I think it's great because I think a broad religious freedom can protect us, but at the same time, how broad does it have to be to protect us?
Just got to be broad where a broad should be broad. That's all I'm saying.
I'm just saying that like there can be a lot of, I don't know that this is something that necessarily we need in order to continue to exist as atheists. That's,
okay,
I guess,
well,
what
Frank is opposed to people doing mushrooms.
I'm not, though. That's the funny thing. Like, I'm all for the legalization of this stuff. And so I think it's really easy to see this kind of thing and be like, you go, weird woo-woo religious people. Stuff. Yeah. You go, you enjoy your little mushrooms, right? Because I'm all for it. Like, I think that that's something that should be legal.
Yeah.
But why do they get a carve out just because they're religious and we don't?
Right.
Right. Like, it starts to feel less like a broad religious protection to me and something that's just like, oh, how else can like religious groups claim special treatment under the law?
Yeah.
Right.
I agree. I think religion is dumb, but as long as we're going to have religion, I'm going to support these ones as over, I'm going to side with the minority ones because, as you say, that's where our freedoms come from.
Sure.
Like that's our category.
Sure.
All right. I'm gonna close this out with a very sad story. Of which is there's a couple by the name of Valerie Hamaker. Hamaker. I'm gonna say Hamaker and Nathan Hamaker. They're a couple. She's a healthcare professional. Mental health professional, that is, and he's not. But they started to do a podcast, and they are Mormons. They and living in Kansas City. Don't know which Kansas City, but they're Mormons out of, I guess they're in the Missouri side because it mentions Jackson County, Missouri, which is a Mormon deep cut that I won't go into. Anyway, so these two started to do a podcast, and the podcast was literally for people who were in various states of struggle with their LDS faith. But it was from the perspective of being LDS and staying LDS.
Okay.
But because, she is a mental health professional, she was going to be honest about things, and she was going to sort of confront things out in the open and be real. And if you know the LDS church, they don't like that at all. So then they were like literally harassed at church by their bishop. Not harassed, but they were called in. One of the things that's very important for Mormons, and let's be clear, these are fully practicing Mormons. They are, they went to church weekly. They had callings in the church, which is a big deal. They were raising their kids in the church. They were going to get their temple recommends, which is a thing that Mormons do, and you have to go and have an interview with your bishop, and prove your worthiness to your bishop, and then he'll let you have a recommend to go to the Mormon temple. And he wouldn't even give them an interview.
What?
He just said, "No, you guys." He what was the quote? He said something along the lines of, "I can't." Oh, here it is. "I can't give you the interview because you think you're worthy, but I don't." Didn't even do the interview part of the interview. Because people in the ward, people around them were getting so hot about their podcast and so mad about it. One of the things
what
that
were
they
they
said,
talking about?
Well, they're just, a lot of it is just about people having a faith crisis and not, and being worried about, the very, very problematic history of the church and all that sort of thing. But also they said things like, hey, or, some people would have a crisis, probably. I'm guessing it's, crises with, oh my God, my kid's gay. I love my kid. The church is treating them terribly. What do I even believe in this anymore?
Right.
Because, whatever. At one point, they said that they thought that it was okay, for instance, to pay tithing rather than to the church, to an outside entity that would be... pay 10%, but give it to a charity that will bless God's children, as they put it.
Oh,
and
no. The church wants its money.
No,
desperately.
Yeah. Yes. They only have hundreds of billions of dollars.
No,
they're not even trillionaires at this point.
They
Desperate.
They need to be trillionaires.
That is poverty, in their minds. So yeah, and. They got flack from all sides, and they have just resigned from the church ahead of a disciplinary council that they were called to, that they opted out of, which I think that's the way to go. Don't just tell them to go fuck themselves, and don't go to their disciplinary council where they get to just pick on you and then tell you that you've been kicked out.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, you shouldn't submit to their quote unquote authority.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to stand there and denounce them to their faces. Like you're going to stand righteously and be like, I do not accept your authority, blah, 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 blah. But that's not where these people...
I rebuke you.
Yeah, that's not where these people are. Right.
You don't kick me out, I kick you out.
And if you feel like you need to do that, go do it. But that's not where these people were. These people are really sad.
Yeah,
they cannot. I mean, I haven't read this article. I don't know these people, but I'm sure they cannot believe that this is where they've landed.
Because what they're doing is actually helping people.
Yeah,
is actually like verifiably offering peace and solace to people who are in turmoil.
Yeah,
and the church has told them, no, that is inappropriate.
Wow, that's. And true believers too. That's it's wild. I do wonder how quickly they went and got a drink, though. Like, because it does seem to be the first thing that Mormons do on exiting the church.
If they're listening,
it's
or
this
if any
desperate, you would think they'd been lifelong alcoholics who had been in recovery for 10 years, just desperately needing a drink.
Yeah.
That's how Mormons tend to act on their way out. It's just like, get me a drink now. Blah. Oh, coffee.
Listen,
just pouring it all over themselves.
All I'm saying is if any of our listeners know them or whatever, I'll buy the first round. I'm just saying. You can get the word to them. Anyway, there you go. If you have anything you'd like to say about any of the things we've talked about today, if you want to do a satanic black mass in our favor, please, feel free to write into us, podcast@thankgodimatheist.com.
And if you'd like to leave a voicemail message, you can do so by calling 424-666-8442. Stick around. There's more show coming up.
Well, Frank, we had some people write into us, so let's dive into that.
Okay.
Hey, Frank and Dan, I can empathize. Sorry, this is Josh. I can empathize with the lady's situation about wanting to attend church just to kind of fit in and not be ostracized for her family's safety. Recently, my tween niece has been absorbing a lot of stuff due to her need to fit in, despite her mom and dad not being particularly religious. It's kind of just always been a thing that our family celebrates Christmas and Easter. However, my niece has recently taken to the fellowship of more religious things, like lock-ins and summer camps. It being a small town, and there isn't much to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Josh notes that he totally did that stuff too when he was a kid. He was a pastor's kid.
Yeah.
I'm concerned that my sister is already doing what this lady is suggesting and just wanting her kids to be able to fit in with their peers. I totally enjoyed all the social interaction as a young person, but sadly, some kids don't have the same experience that I did, and I feel it's likely to be an issue for parent and child later on. I've experienced some of these small town churches, and many are scary. I'd advise maybe participate if your children are kindergarten age, Easter egg hunts and Santa Claus, and then educate them once you get into a teenager's totally malleable mind. There may be no going back. I don't know about that, Josh. I think that very frequent conversation about religion that isn't. And you don't even have to be dogmatic about there is no God or whatever, but you can point out when something is kind of silly and just be like, does that sound right to you? Does it, you know what I mean? I think you can plant better seeds than they can plant if you're smart. But yes, you're playing with a little bit of fire because kids glom onto things.
Well, and it normalizes a lot of that messaging, right?
Yeah.
Personally, if I were a parent, I would want the religious messaging to be as foreign and weird sounding to my kids as possible, as just one more way to inoculate them against potentially falling into it, right?
Yeah,
but
it is dangerous
grew up in a small town too, right?
Yeah.
I know what it's like to be also a member of the out group, in a small town,
and you weren't even religious, but you were the wrong religious.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I will say there was a lot of participation from those of us on the outside toward the inside, right? There was a lot of stuff we just kind of either put up with or went and attended. But I mean, the pressure is huge to go do their Wednesday night, right? Mm-hmm. We had our own, so we were able to stay away from that stuff. But I guarantee you, we all would have been roped in if we hadn't had other stuff to do into their activities.
And as a parent, it's scary because you let your kid go, and then you're not there to witness what the people are saying to these kids and whatever. I would want to be there at least a few times just so that then I can have conversations with the kids afterwards and be like, hey, how did that make you feel when they said this? How did it make you feel when they said that? Yeah, that's that's a really nice, attractive proposition. It doesn't make sense to me, but I mean, it sounds good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just get them, make sure that the kids get the opposite side.
Yeah.
And they're they're actually thinking about it instead of just feeling about it.
Yeah. It's just rough because so much of like social life of these small towns revolves around the big church in town or the big churches in town.
Totally.
So,
all right. Dawn wrote into us to say, hello, Frank and Dan. I was listening to your most recent show and the need for atheists to have a sense of community they feel may be missing, especially if they've left a church environment. I moved to Arizona 6 years ago after spending my entire life in a blue state in the Midwest. I feel a little out of sorts here since I don't know anyone. I met a person through a Facebook group who introduced me to a local atheist meetup group. I found the group in the Meetup app and so thankful for it. We meet once a month and add other meetup events too. I found a sense of community there. I was never part of a church, but felt I needed like-minded people to socialize with. So just suggesting that others who may feel that they need a sense of community look for local atheist meetups or create one if there's not one near them.
That's great.
Yeah. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it with, let's see. Okay, we'll go with Joe in Alaska who says, Frank and Dan, I listened to your episode where you talked about Peter Popoff and his magic water. One thing you are incorrect about is that good old Pete will send a small sample of the otherworldly liquid for free.
Really?
I had heard of this mystical fluid before. I went to Pete's website to request it. They asked why I wanted their water. I told them that I was addicted to the marijuanas and needed help. A few weeks later, I received the packet of the magic water with an insert asking that I give them feedback on how it helped me. Of course, they asked for money, too. I wrote back saying that I put their water in my bong and it gave me the best high ever. It was so good that I saw Jesus. They must have taken me off the mailing list because I haven't heard back at all. Thought you'd enjoy this. I just like that because if they're giving away free water, I encourage everybody to get to go and request some just so that they have to spend their money on you.
And time and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Just
also, smart ass.
I know. Oh my God. Please bless me with some of your stupid water, idiots.
I love that. Put it in my bong. I hope you did. I hope you actually did.
I hope you really did, because if you didn't, it's a funny joke, but it's better if you actually did it. And I think other people should find clever ways of desecrating the Costco water.
Wash your bum.
Yeah, sure, exactly. Feed it into your bidet in some way. All right, well, we got some folks to thank. I'm going to start us off. Jim, thank you so much for your one-time donation. You are now a deacon in the priesthood of us. So congratulations. Go magic power out in the world. Go tell people you're a deacon.
Yeah. And then over on Patreon, we have a couple new patrons. We have a new teacher by the name of Older Than Boomer.
Okay.
And
wow.
Yeah. Silent.
Is that even
silent?
Possible?
Greatest? Silent or greatest? One of those.
Silent.
Yeah. And then
the greatest are mostly.
Oh, that's probably gone. Right. And then we have a new elder, Dan. Brittany edited her membership up to elder.
Well done, Brittany.
Woohoo!
You are a champion among us, and now you can go and proselytize to the world.
Yeah, amongst many other things. You can be the Elders Quorum president.
You could baptize someone.
Well, you can do that at priest
to the TGIA.
Yeah.
Thing. You can. I don't know.
You can give him the gift of the Holy Ghost.
Yeah.
If you're an elder. So there you go.
Boom.
All right. Dan.
All right. Well, yes. I believe there's one more thing.
Well, there is. If these people, if any of our dear listeners would love to join in and support the show, we would welcome the support.
Oh, yeah.
It actually means a lot. This outpouring that's happened over these last few weeks has actually meant a lot to me. Aside
and if
from,
you would like to keep up that crazy momentum, keep us in shorts and t-shirts, meaning we able to afford our clothes.
You can go to our website, thankgodimatheist.com/donate.
Yeah.
And as always, Dan, we have our top donor to thank, our Lord and Savior, Davis.
Oh, no one's unseated the king. There you go.
Yet.
More show coming up. Well, Frank.
Dan.
I don't know if you know, but recently, the president of these United States, Elon Musk, went on, I think it was on the Joe Rogan podcast. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a small little show. Very few people listen to it.
Niche audience.
And literally said that the problem with our country was empathy.
Yeah, from his perspective, I could see that being a problem.
Right? And one that he does not share. He doesn't seem to have any problem with empathy at all. Recently, there have been at least 2 books that have come out about the sin of empathy. The idea of empathy being and not just like, oh, it can be dangerous. No, it is a full-on sin.
Which is the idea. It can be dangerous.
Right?
Oh, you better be careful with that empathy.
Yeah.
Stuff. That's
if you indulge it, it's fine in small doses, but if you indulge in it too much, you're in real danger of actually, I don't know,
a libtard.
Doing what Jesus told you to do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't want to do that.
No.
It is shocking because like empathy it's essential, right?
Yeah.
It is what makes a society be able to function, right?
Well, it is,
like, and a society that has where people have no empathy, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Right.
And it is like, here's the thing. Empathy is hard. Like, it actually asks something of you that and something that isn't going to be comfortable. So for instance, if you choose to empathize with the homeless in your town, it might call you to some sort of action. And that action might not feel great. Like, you might give up some of your money, for example, or you might go and do volunteer work and give up some of your time to help, or you might lobby your local your lawmakers to help them. None of that is easy.
Yeah.
I think I can see why it's alluring to say, oh no, au contraire, empathy is actually a bad thing because it feels yucky to me.
Yeah. I would love to see how they break this down. Like, I might have to actually get a copy of one of these books to just be like, how are they parsing this out? Because they can't just be saying that everything that we understand as empathy is bad, right? They must be carving some stuff out. What is it? What is the empathy that they're so concerned about?
Well, I mean, so here's the thing. It's literally like what they do is they talk in circles. They do a lot of circular reasoning, but do you remember when Vice President what's his name? Why I'm so glad I'm not thinking of his name. Vance. My brain was going JD Vice. No, Vice is wrong. JD Vance went on a show recently and said that his Catholic church that he is a convert to has this idea of the order of love, which there's a Latin term for it. Which then, eventually the Pope came out and said, no, he got this wrong. But his idea was basically concentric circles of caring about people. And you care about your family the most, and then you care about your community a little bit less, and then you care about your country. And then eventually, once you've cared about all of them, sort of as a side note, as an afterthought, you can care about the rest of humanity if you want to, but it's kind of dumb.
I don't know. I don't remember that from Sermon on the Mount or whatever Jesus is teaching about the concentric circles of empathy,
of love,
of love, right? Like, I do remember the parable of the Venn diagrams, but
yeah,
concentric circles, no,
never. He would never have done that. He literally, like, I'm seeing people saying things like for instance, right now I'm looking at alpha and omega something.com. It's AOMIN.org. But it's like, it's very clearly a very Christian-y sort of thing that popped up when I typed in empathy is a sin in the Google machine.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's literally talking about how, like, for instance, one of the quotes that this guy quotes, and I'm not finding who he's quoting here. Oh, nope, it's his own tweet. He's quoting himself, but he says, when you start with man as image-bearing creature of God, you can understand why sympathy is good, but empathy is sinful. Do not surrender our mind to the sinful emotional responses of others. And he starts that by saying, Jesus endured all the trauma needed to accomplish redemption and reconciliation. Dragging your emotional trauma into the fellowship and making everyone else feel guilty for it is the perfect poison for the body. Get over yourself. It's about him, not you.
What?
There's no argument there, except that I don't want to feel, except that when I hear about your pain, I feel bad, and I don't like to feel bad. So shut up and just get right with Jesus.
Well, I heard something weird there of like, Jesus felt empathy. You don't have to.
Right. Jesus did all of the empathying. So it's done.
He ended empathy. Empathy ends with Jesus.
Yeah, you don't need to do it. So shut up and don't make me feel bad about hoarding money and leave my Cybertruck alone.
Oh my God.
It's literally like, I mean, here's the thing. And you said this when you and I were talking about this, when we were sort of thinking about this before the show. You mentioned that the more people sort of exercise their empathy and really engage it and really believe in it and believe that humanity, that we only work when we work together and when we care about each other.
Yeah.
It makes you liberal.
Yeah. Yeah. It totally.
It kind of ruins the conservatives' whole thing.
It really does. I went through a training, these workplace things where they bring in people, and I worked at a fairly woo-woo organization. It didn't have to be woo-woo, but the people running it were woo-woo and kind of ruined the whole thing. But they brought in this consultant type who did trainings on empathy building. And I went in with sort of the same skeptical stance that I do with all this kind of stuff. And I admit I'm not a good employee in that kind of setting. Right.
Right.
I never responded well to that kind of crap. But anyway, the presenter was going on about empathy and talking about, sort of how you could build empathy in the community that we worked with. We worked with teenagers. And I had the thought during that training of, oh my God, this is how you make progressives. This is how you make liberals, right? Is like, if we've almost like these kids are coming in it was a pretty liberal organization. So the kids were already coming in from probably fairly liberal households, but not all of them. And it was like, if we are actually like teaching this to these kids, we're going to be churning out little progressive thinkers, right? And I didn't have any problem with that because all we were teaching was empathy, right?
Yeah.
But it was obvious to me at that moment, right? Like that's kind of the key. That's kind of the silver bullet for expanding. It's the crux of everything, right? Like if you're an empathetic person, you're gonna care about these programs that help people, right? Yeah. And anyway, it's pathetic. It's so gross that they would be trying to badmouth empathy of all things.
But I mean, how else do you justify yourself when like an entire half of our country is voting based on trying to hurt immigrants, based on trying to hurt trans people, based on trying to do genuine harm to these people?
Here's the deal, Dan. I think that they are voting in a way that's indiscriminate of these groups. See, of these groups suffering, right? Because they lack empathy, right? For the groups. They're not thinking about the consequence, right? Like the thing that the way you were just phrasing it is like their intent is to do the harm. Their intent.
I've literally read multiple posts by people saying, I'm glad that we are doing harm to these people. So not everybody. You're right.
Everybody.
That's not everybody. That's the most extreme version.
That's a special breed right there. Yeah. But I think that it's a side effect. The harm and the hurt is a side effect that people are ignoring because they're not seeing these people as human beings who are
right. But then they're
equal
reading,
and on the same ground as they are. Right.
But when you then read sad things about, people, when you read that, there are people who are just seeking asylum and then they're being transferred off to a work camp in another country, out of sight, out of mind, and that doesn't sit right with you. You have to come up with a theology that you can wrap your head around that gets you off the hook. Because you voted for that to happen. And that theology, I mean, you're not going to find it from Jesus because Jesus said, welcome the stranger, and clothe and house the foreigner and, just like all of these things. And so what you need to turn to is some asshole who declares that empathy is bad. But yeah, like you say, like literally humanity as a species, like Homo sapiens could not survive out of society. Like we only work as a social critter.
Yeah.
We're terrible otherwise. So we're literally genetically and evolutionarily programmed for empathy. These people are fighting against their programming.
Yeah.
In doing this.
I mean, they want to put limits on it, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, if you talk about the arc of human history, right? If you talk about like what human beings have done to each other through the history of this planet, I mean, we still haven't eradicated slavery globally, right?
That's true.
And it's like, how much empathy do we have for the people who make the goods that come into this country, right?
Yeah.
The clothes that we wear, the devices that we, that distract us all day long.
Yeah. When it benefits us, are we able to then say, I still don't care about the benefit because I care more about the people.
And it's like, so the fact of the matter is that in our modern society, and this is, I think we've discussed it a little bit on the show before, of just the complexity of making moral and ethical decisions in the modern world.
Yeah.
Right? and that it's nearly impossible. Our hands are dirty and
you
bloody,
can't clean them.
right?
Yeah.
Because of just you can't, right? Like you can't get away from it.
Yeah.
And the issue is probably that we are all fairly selective about what we're empathetic about. The difference is, I think we're not trying to escape having empathy, right? And we're not trying to we wouldn't turn empathy into a bad word, right? In order to justify the crimes, right? Essentially that are at our feet.
Yeah.
Right? Like we can't act like we've got all the empathy in the world and still happily like play on our iPhone all day.
It's
right.
Well, I mean, it's literally it's like the part of the problem is that you can have all the empathy you want for, the people halfway around the world who are being treated terribly to give you your t-shirt. But we don't have much power to do it. These are systemic problems that have to be dealt with on a systemic level. And we're powerless on that front until we change the whole system.
Right.
And the system is trying to avoid being changed, and one of the ways that it's doing that is promoting this idea that empathy is sinful.
That don't feel bad. Yeah. Don't feel badly about the world that we live in.
I mean, half of the reason, like all of the justifications for laws that attempt to, take away teaching Black history or, our history of slavery or whatever, they're all justified by saying these make our kids feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, or these are
Dan. They're trying bad that you didn't finish the sentence about their whiteness, about their privilege, about their
exactly. This is just demonizing white people. Well, no, it's not. It's just teaching history. But if we can call it demonizing white people, then we don't have to actually confront our own feelings about any of it. We can just feel good feelings and not bad feelings.
Because being white is great.
Yeah. I mean, objectively,
should never question your privileges.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, we've blathered on quite a lot. I think
sufficiently.
I think we should now turn the time over to our listeners to mull on this and then send us angry emails about it, or complimentary emails, or whatever emails you would like to send us. The way to do that is podcast@thankgodimatheist.com.
Or call and leave us a voicemail message. We'd love to hear from you. The telephone number is 424-666-8442.
Yeah, to support the show, go to thankgodimatheist.com/donate.
This episode was edited by Roger Gowdy, and music was provided by the Red Rock Hot Club and Gordon Johnston.
Thanks to all y'all for tuning in. We sure do appreciate you.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank God I'm Atheist is a production of TGIA Media, LLC, copyright 2025, all rights reserved.